Okay, so today I'm joined by Lionel Joyce. Um, Lionel, do you want to just start by just telling the listeners and the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Um, what's the headline that I generally give is that I'm the lunatic who took over the asylum, and that's quite demonstrably true in that I spent the best part of a year as a patient in a psychiatric hospital, having
Yeah,
been put into an acute admission ward and then transferred to a very sexy psychotherapy hospital in Richmond.
yeah,
And I was there for just over 9 months. And then I was to come out of that thinking nothing had changed. I was admitted following a quite serious suicide attempt.
mm,
And I came out of the hospital thinking there was no reason not to commit suicide. Actually, I
right,
felt really lonely and lost and in a state of fairly continuous despair.
yeah,
And then I was I was to join the National Health Service
yeah,
just in order to get out of London. I was living in London at the time, and I thought it was a really bad place to be. So I joined the National Health Service. I ended up in Nottingham, and while I was in Nottingham, I was set up the hospital bar. I was running the hospital bar, and I realised that I had a problem with alcohol,
right,
and that led me to join Alcoholics Anonymous, which was an unusual animal, which we might talk about. It's a very, very strange organisation. It doesn't observe any of the organisational rules at all.
mm,
And it worked for me very well. And it led to me being consistently promoted in the NHS until I was made the first chief executive of the Newcastle Mental Health Services. So
yeah,
I ran Newcastle Mental Health Services between 1985 and 2000.
yeah,
I pioneered a number of really exciting new services from adolescent forensic psychiatry through. We were the first centre for cognitive uh, therapy in this country. I was at St Nick's in Newcastle. We had a number of chairs that we set up. We were really quite a pioneering organisation. And I left that in 2000 and have done a variety of, well, national board jobs like Legal Services Commission, Mental Health Act Commission, Public Guardian Board, stuff like that.
yeah,
And so I've had this sort of kind of glittering career, which
yeah.
is really not bad for an alcoholic, mentally ill person. And I've done all right.
Yeah, I know. I know. It doesn't sound like you've had much spare time over the years, Lionel. But uh, so, Lionel, one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on today, and I hope this doesn't come across as too candid, and you'll forgive me, and hopefully anybody listening will forgive me. But really, in basic terms, what I wanted to talk about is we're all stuck in at the moment. We have a lot of people have access to alcohol, and judging by the empty shelves that we see when we go into the supermarkets, that's certainly a popular item of choice at the moment. So we're stuck in. We've got a lot of alcohol. My concern is that we might all go crazy and we might all turn alcoholic. Um, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, firstly, about alcoholism and when sort of a few drinks each night turns into more. So, just from your own experience, both for yourself and, obviously what you've seen in the last 45 years working with Alcoholics Anonymous, uh, how much is too much and when does it become a problem?
Well, it's not a simple solution to that because it depends upon each individual, both on their physical makeup, because it's a substance and it therefore depends upon what your body mass is. So men are much more prone to be able to drink than women are. So women typically can become alcoholics within 2 to 5 years. Men take 5 to 15 years. However, the strength of alcohol available has gone up dramatically in the last 10 years. So the alcohol you're buying is something like twice as strong as the alcohol that I used to buy.
Really?
It's deliberately done because, unfortunately, breweries need people to become alcohol dependent in order to secure their profits. There was a lovely article in The Economist that demonstrated breweries cannot make enough money unless they have problem drinkers drinking. And so what's going on is actually the brewers are wanting people to become problem drinkers. Not everyone, but a small percentage, between 2 and 4% of the population, which is slightly higher than is the current levels. And it's not difficult to do because the current recommendation is 14 units a week. Now, it used to be 14 units for women and 21 units for men.
Yeah.
They've reduced it to 14 for each.
And
but a unit...
sorry to interrupt there, Lionel, but for somebody that isn't familiar with the unit system necessarily, what does 14 units look like over the course of a week?
Well, when I was drinking, 1 unit would be half a pint of beer. Because I was a beer drinker. I didn't really drink spirits. Would be half a pint of beer. Now it's a third of a pint of beer because beer is so much stronger.
Right.
So 1 pint of beer is 3 units.
Mm.
So if you have a few pints, you've virtually done your weekly limit in one night. And what's happening is quite insidiously, your body is absorbing quite high levels of alcohol and you're becoming inured to it. You're becoming quite comfortable with that level of alcohol. Indeed, you're starting to expect it because one of the reasons people drink is to reduce anxiety.
Mm.
And alcohol works very well. They're self-medicating to reduce anxiety and it does that job. That's fine. The problem is it's also a depressant. So what you're trading is anxiety for depression, and over any period of time, you'll gradually realise that depression is starting to seep into your life, and that's a real danger. So when is alcohol a risk? One of the answers is when it costs you more than money, and that's a bit glib because most of your viewers won't run out of money. They'll run out of life before they run out of money. Because alcohol's ridiculously cheap. And if you wanted to keep people alive, you would make a minimum unit price of alcohol, 1 unit of alcohol, at least 50p. In fact, it's possible to drink endlessly on the sort of costs that are currently available. So the risks are very real. The risks come because what you think you're doing is being social, and actually what you're doing is self-medicating. You're trying to deal with your feelings by using an artificial stimulant, and that artificial stimulant is going to come back and bite you. Now, it ought to be, in the ideal world, you drink the 14 units and that's it, it's fine, it just takes the edge off, have a nice, comfortable time. The problem is that's not what happens. Because you feel anxious, because this is a very anxious time, and alcohol solves that anxiety problem, you drink more and you drink more. And you're bored, so you drink more. And there is a very real risk that people will change their drinking pattern, and whilst they may not become alcohol dependent in the next month or 3 months, what will happen is they'll set up a pattern so they become alcohol dependent over the next year, 2 years. And then that's really horrible because most people, once they're functioning alcoholically, stay functioning alcoholically for quite a long time. Before they get cancer or heart disease, which are the 2 biggest killers as a consequence of alcoholism.
Okay.
The other killer is suicide.
Right.
Now, that's a bit of a risk at the moment because we're in a situation where nationally there's a high level of anxiety. National crisis, which is typically a time when suicides would go up. If you're personally liable to depression, then you're suddenly doubly at risk because there's a national calamity going on and a personal calamity going on, and somehow they seem to reinforce.
Yeah. So on that point, Lionel, obviously I don't like to leave a point like that without some practical tips on something, if somebody is experiencing depression as a result of this crisis. What, obviously you've had that background in the NHS. You're obviously well versed in terms of what's available for people from the mental health standpoint. If somebody is feeling depressed, what steps could they take now to help themselves?
The first thing is to talk. Now, that's really difficult when you're depressed because you feel heavy and it seems pointless. You don't see why you should. But if there's any way you can talk, or somebody who knows you and loves you can talk, get you talking, that's the first and the best instant response. The second is to, if you feel you're depressed, is to talk to a GP. GPs are now really skilled at handling depression. It's the things that's become a major issue for them. They know what to do. They have good first-line drugs. There are good talking therapies to back up the first-line drugs. It's a totally treatable condition.
Yeah.
But it does need to be treated. Do not ignore it.
And that would remain the same advice despite the COVID-19 crisis, Lionel. Still speak to your GP if you're feeling depressed or feeling that you need some help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And GPs will hear that and respond to it.
Great.
It's quite separately, quite outside COVID-19. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. And Lionel, so obviously, we touched a little bit on how so alcohol can cure anxiety, but can cause depression. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the link between alcohol and mental health. In terms of people's mental health, from being stuck in, obviously, I know that you've recently, unfortunately, had to be stuck in your flat for a little while as well. From your side, Lionel, what do you notice? What do you notice helps you? And what practical tips are there for people who are perhaps mourning the outside world?
It's a fascinating time in which to be in this situation because we've never had so much connection. It is absolutely possible to stay connected 24/7, and that's wonderful, and we need to do it.
Yeah.
So if it's possible, I would draw up a small rota of people you're going to contact either weekly or daily, just to connect with a human being, just to get outside of the four walls. There's a wonderful variety. I mean, we must be living in the golden age of television, and the quality of films and programs that are available is quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
So it's really worth spending money on that and making that a real feature. Building structure is vital. Which to say, saying you need structure, and that can be very simple things like the time you get up, the time you go to bed, when you have your meals. You can just build those 2 or 3 things into your day that will immediately give you shape and the possibility of a sense of control that will otherwise disappear. The idea that you're going to be sitting in your onesies all day, just a really, really bad news for your mental and your physical health.
Yes. Yeah.
Physical health, you've probably got loads of ideas what people can do around houses.
I mean, just on that, Lionel, I mean, we've obviously just got started with just training people at home, but essentially, on physical health, if anybody's listening, I think something is better than nothing, and just get started is my advice. Is don't overcomplicate things and do what you can manage and get started. So obviously we've got lots of other tips, but the last thing I think is for people to feel frozen or stuck at the start point, just get going and feel good about whatever you do would be my advice. So Lionel, obviously another aspect to your background is your work in the NHS. So I'm interested in, during this period, Lionel, what do you feel are the biggest challenges that face the NHS in the upcoming period?
Well, what they're saying is that the number of intensive care unit beds they will need is far greater than those currently available, and they're expecting this extraordinary peak in the need for ventilation. Now, as far as I can tell, the ICUs that they're using are simply holding bays with ventilators. And we don't have an effective treatment for COVID-19 at all. All we're doing is holding people, enabling them to stay alive through ventilation, or failing to do that, because there's quite a high mortality rate within ICUs. Do I think that the NHS can cope? Yes. What's so infuriating is that we did know about this 3 years ago, and we did do the planning. It never got implemented. So all of the resources that could have been available 3 years ago are now having to be procured, and it's part of that silly idea that you can plan for the worst, but we don't take it seriously. Now, hopefully, this will teach us to take our planning seriously
Mm.
and act on it in the future. Can the NHS cope if it's given the resources? It's an extraordinary organisation, and
Mm.
it really is the ability to swing resources behind this particular condition and deal with it. I think I know that it's going to be successful.
And the current success, Lionel, or the performance of the NHS, how would you compare that to, say, what seems to be going on in the US, for example?
Going on where? Sorry.
In the US, in America.
Oh, well, one has to feel terribly sad for the US. I mean, 28 million people uninsured and not eligible for healthcare means that they have to keep their illness concealed, which then increases the spread, which is why it's being predicted that the crisis in the States will dwarf anywhere else in the world. And so far, that's looking likely. Where
Ah,
UK, the fact everyone knows they can get help means that they actually go and get help.
right.
There's a good chance that we'll therefore reduce the levels of occurrence around the country.
So you think it's the number of people without insurance that causes the main issue for the US?
But that's one of the issues. The other issues is that you can't survive unless you work. And that's true for some people on the gig economy in the UK, but it's overwhelmingly true in the States.
Yeah.
That if you're not working, then you won't get any money. So you have to work, which means you're spreading the virus.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And Lionel, just for just in terms of uh, in terms of what we could do collectively, is there any sort of proactive things that people listening to this can do to help other people who they think might be either struggling from alcoholism or moving toward alcoholism, I should say, or indeed any problems with their mental health?
We have to do something that's very un-British and actually just reach out, pick up the phone and phone somebody, or better still, WhatsApp them, do this face-to-face stuff, which is not what we normally do, and we certainly don't do it with people with whom we haven't done it before. So there's a question of breaking new ground and actually saying just one person each day new, I'm going to try and FaceTime or WhatsApp or connect with. If everybody just did one new person every day, we would change the societal experience of this. And we'd have fun.
And on that note, Lionel, I'd just like to say, Lionel Joyce, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.